Hello, my name is Jonas Agdur. I work as a senior advisor at KEKS and I'm a member of the EGL Steering Group. I have been asked to talk about youth workers, policy development and the way ahead. This is kind of a serious title, so I felt like I needed kind of a sidekick. This is Kitty. Hopefully she awakes sweet memories for some of you, and the rest of you hopefully like kittens. But let's start from the beginning. Well, not exactly from Adam and Eve. Here they just symbolize the actual providers of youth work, the youth workers. As a youth worker, you're always on stage. You can never hide. You're always naked. Others can hide. Teachers can hide behind a curriculum. Social workers can hide behind the law. Managers can hide behind bureaucracy. NA staff can hide behind the Erasmus Plus program guide. Not that they would ever think of doing so. But youth workers, they can never hide. Young people see right through them. They see if they are solid or just a cloud of words and attitudes. And they see and lose their trust if they try to hide. So, as a youth worker, you can never go with raised fists. You must meet young people relaxed, without preconceptions, at eye level, participating and learning together with young people in their process, taking the situations as they come. Taking the situations as they come means that you will have to improvise. A youth worker must be like a jazz musician, able to hit the right tone at the right moment, playing by the ear. So, why all this fuss about European youth work policy? Why launching a European charter on local youth work? We're talking about artists. What would Billie Holiday or Miles Davis have said about a European charter on local jazz music? Well, the answer is actually quite simple. First of all, we all know that all youth workers are not like this. Some are adult role models, explaining the world to young people, putting themselves center stage, knowing best, showing the way, etc., coordinating young people's participation. And secondly, as a youth worker, you are part of an organization, playing together with others, being part of an orchestra. Orchestras sound really bad if they don't play the same kind of music. So, if you're not a solo artist, there must be an agreement on what music to play. Improvising together asks for a common beat. This is why we need to take European youth work policy to the local level, to municipalities where youth work is still marching music or folklore from the late 60s, if it exists at all. However, quite some EU policy has its equivalent in the Eurovision Song Contests. Too much of everything in a polished mix where everyone can pick their own favorite, or, as they say in Italy, siamo fuori di testa. This is why we developed the European Charter on Local Youth Work, creating a clear common beat, on the basis of which youth workers can improvise together. So, how did we get here? And how do we take the next step? Some of you might remember Kitty. I introduced her when I was talking about youth work policy at the Europe Goes Local conference in Brussels 2019, showing this short film, saying that youth work had often been chasing its own tail when trying to clarify its policy through describing its practice instead of the other way around, which youth work some years ago became more and more aware of. In Brussels, the first European Youth Work Convention was held. The theme was celebrating diversity. In these kind of events, there's a final declaration, and in the final declaration of this convention, you could read, youth work is complex, and often misunderstood. This was confirmed when we got this document, Working with Young People, the Value of Youth Work in the European Union. It was a broad mapping on the current state of play of youth work in all the membership countries. It's an interesting read, but in the conclusions you could read the following. It's a blurred picture. That is to say, it wasn't really clear what we were actually mapping and presenting in this report. So, in 2015 was held the second European Youth Work Convention. In search for common ground was the theme. And having a final declaration, we could read that in order to reach this common ground, we commonly wanted a recommendation from the Council of Europe, a European Charter on local youth work, and a European youth work agenda. And in 2017, the Council of Europe launched and adopted a recommendation on youth work, stating that youth work is quintessentially a social practice, facilitating young people's active participation and inclusion in their communities and in decision-making. The primary function of youth work is to motivate and support young people to find and pursue constructive pathways in life, thus contributing to their personal and social development and to society at large. 1 year before, in 2016, Europe Goes Local started, a platform where 26 national agencies and some partner organizations cooperate to support youth work at the municipal level. The aims of Europe Goes Local, as they are formulated today, are to support the development of the provision, recognition, practice and quality of youth work, guided by the Charter. Make the European dimension an integral part of youth work at the municipal level, and to contribute to the development of youth work within the European Youth Work Agenda and the Bonn process. The approach of Europe Goes Local is that it is a platform which creates dialogue and cooperation, providing concrete activities, learning and networking opportunities, tools and sources of knowledge. In 2019, we launched the Charter. It had been developed through a long process, engaging over 200 organizations all over Europe. It contains an introduction saying that a democratic society needs the voices and active participation of young people. In order to fulfill this role, young people need a place where they can set their own agenda. A space where they get the stimulation and support to further develop the knowledge, skills, attitudes and values they need in order to reach their full potential as individuals and citizens. After the introduction, it contains 5 sections. One about the core principles, the principles that should guide youth work, that actually constitutes youth work. A section about policy, both about what it needs to contain, but also how it needs to be developed. Organization and practice, how should we organize, how should we carry out our practice so that it meets the core principles. And the youth worker, what does the youth worker need to know and act in order to meet the principles? And finally, about quality development, since the world is changing around us and we need to constantly develop and further improve youth work. I won't go through these sections here, but if you're not familiar with them, please see to that you are. The next step in fulfilling the wishes from the Second Youth Work Convention was taken in 2020 with the adoption of an EU resolution on a European Youth Work Agenda, stating that it is a strategic framework for strengthening and developing quality and innovation in and recognition of youth work. Cooperation within the youth work's community of practice is fundamental to the effectiveness of the agenda and will shape both the content of the agenda and its future development. And the community of practice is all of us that are engaged in youth work, from politicians and researchers to managers and youth workers. This led some days afterward to the third European Youth Work Convention, where we discussed this resolution. And also in this convention, there was a final declaration called Signposts for the Future. This final declaration was to guide what is called the Bonn process, the process during which we will try to implement the resolution and the agenda. This final declaration is a long document, but it contains at least one, for us, central point, saying that the local youth work sector must build on cooperation between all actors concerned. The European Charter for Local Youth Works provides a useful tool to build this cooperation. So, back to the Charter. It's not replacing policy. This Charter is not a political document. It transforms policy into concrete guidelines regarding what is needed in order to establish and maintain quality in local youth work. It is a common European platform for the necessary dialogue on youth work, a checklist that helps us to establish a reflective policy and practice. And it states that various actors on different levels are responsible for the different issues that are listed in this Charter. None of them can meet all of its requirements by themselves. None of them can withdraw from responsibility. Which means none of you can meet all of its requirements by yourselves. None of you can withdraw from responsibility. Our role is to find ways to support the use of the Charter. Our tools are the Charter in itself, the web-based support document or material called the Changemakers Kit, study visits, project labs, and our Charter ambassadors. The main questions that we need to answer are: how should we use them together? Together meaning not only together as different stakeholders, but also how should we combine these different tools in a way that gives a maximum effect? How should we cooperate? And how should we reach out? How should we play together? How do we find a common beat? And when discussing this, be aware of the ones that might be lurking somewhere in the room or perhaps in the back of your head. Get off stage. Keep your fists down. You are not the adult. You don't know. Meet at eye level. Learn. Don't coordinate others. Participate together. And take your thoughts seriously. Be a thorough young rebel. Have fun. You can never hide. Cooperation builds on mutual trust. Stay naked. The way ahead. Wasn't he supposed to talk about the way ahead? I just did. You are laying the way ahead. Let's move on together. Thank you for listening.